And welcome back to Dollars and Dragons. Today I have with me Andreas Walters. If you'd like to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Andreas Walters. I am a tabletop RPG publisher at Metalweave Games, and we produce anything from systemless supplements, Owlbear plushes, miniatures, and system content, as well as original games and supplements.
Cool, yeah, and that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of titles. That's a lot of responsibility. Let's talk about how you got started in tabletop and what year was it? Not to date you, but I'm just curious.
Oh, God, do I have to look? I think it's 2017, 2018.
Oh, okay. That's not that
So,
long ago. Critical Role was on the air, right?
no, wait, no. Yes, they probably were. No, were they?
Yeah, they were. I think they were.
Oh, God. Cards, Kickstarter, God.
Admittedly, I'm not the most diehard of
Yeah,
CR fans.
2017.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, that was my first Kickstarter project. I technically started a year before that.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Gotcha.
so yeah, I got my start in making free supplements, one-page supplements for money, for the Money Cook Games Numenera supplement as like part of the active community. From there, it became into a licensed agreement where I was able to create supplements, and then sometime after that, I think I created like 5 or 6 supplements under the Money Cook Numenera limited use license. And then after that, I did my own Kickstarter, which came non-player cards, and then later the Baby Bestiary, which took off and became its own thing, and that's where I started doing more independent publishing.
Gotcha. Why? What inspired you to get started with creating those supplements, those one pagers for Monty Cook? Was that just a hobby thing for you, or what?
So it was very much so interestingly, like when Money Cook Games released Numenera, I was sort of like just finishing up college and had definitely fallen out of with my tabletop RPG group because we kind of like moved all over the world. So our group kind of fell apart for the most part. And so me like getting on Twitter, our TTRPG Twitter back in 2016 was a very different place. And that's when I like first found out about Numenera and like Monty Cook launching, like getting involved in Kickstarter, which was still relatively new on the scene, honestly. This was a very, very new field of content. And so with this, Monty Cook Games was like, pushing out like Numenera, and like I knew the name Monty Cook because of all the third edition books and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is cool, like he's doing something new. I didn't actually know Monty Cook other than just like a name on the third edition books. So I thought I was kind of excited, and it sounded like a cool concept. And so backed it. A year later, it released. And it was a vibrant little community that existed on this website called like Ninth World Hub. And what was cool about it was there was a little chat room in the website that like we were all talking about. We were able to create content and as well like chat and be like a little mini active community. And I think this was before Discord, maybe like before Discord really hit it off.
Yeah.
And so this was like the place to be when talking about the community. And so this is where like people started doing like collabs. Like I would write up, and this is where I was still learning InDesign. Like I was at this point, I was just getting access to InDesign and stuff to do stuff for work, essentially. And so that's where I kind of like justified to pay for it myself, I think, and got a student license or whatever. So I was paying for it relatively cheap. And I was learning to use InDesign and Photoshop. And so that's where it started with one pagers, like, trying to understand how transparencies worked, formatting, all that stuff's crap, trust me. Like it's like multiple text boxes, different sizes. I would use a different text for the header and then different text box for the body. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And actually, the first book that I ended up publishing, or that the first licensed book that I put on Drive-Thru RPG, which was Ninth World Assassins, is also formatted terribly like that. And I got it printed through the Drive-Thru RPG printing process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to open it up again, and I'm like, oh god, like every page has like like a bottom detail, and like all of those were manually placed, like,
Right.
or duplicated. Like it wasn't using a template control or anything.
Yeah, I just there's a couple comments I want to make. Like, first of all, chat room community from a website. That's first of all, that's amazing. Did it keep the chat history?
I think so. I mean, the website did die a little while later, in
Uh-huh.
favor of like Discord, and like because it was like community managed essentially, like one
Hmm.
person was essentially responsible for it. I don't think it was. I think it was just like people were active around the same time. There was about like 8 community members, 8 to 10, 12 community members that were there pretty constantly, including
Hmm.
myself. And so we would bring up ideas and stuff like that and chat. Social media posts to go talk about like the various content that was created there or published there, stuff like that. It was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, that's like a totally different age of the internet. That reminds me of like when I was on the internet like mid 2000s, like when I first started, back in dial-up, and like those communities were we were still using like things like TeamSpeak as opposed to like
Yeah.
before Discord came out, and we were using like PHP message boards and like that sort of shit. And yeah, I remember that time. It was a magical time in some ways. And it felt like there was a little bit better of a community altogether. I think people's maybe that's just like rose-colored glasses looking back on it, but
It
I
was a
feel
lot
like
easier to ban someone.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like forums honestly are better in so many ways, which is why I'm probably gonna look into like forums for my own Discord community and start opening that
They're
because
interesting.
I liked it better because it felt like you would actually like communicate in a way that seemed less ephemeral. Like Discord feels very ephemeral, which is cool for like certain types of conversations, but I think talking about a particular topic and going back and
Threads
forth.
don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
Right.
cool. Convert a thread into a topic, something like that. But the problem. Oh, sorry, I'm tangent thinking. There's an
Yeah.
interesting design problem that, like in Slack, what you can do is you can take a group of conversation and move it into another conversation.
Oh,
So like you can literally say, I'm gonna take all of this and put it over here into this like conversation with this other group of people.
okay.
Which is like that's nice, but like in Discord, like I want to be able to select a bunch of conversations and drag it into a thread or drag it
Uh-huh.
into a post because it's not relevant to the current conversation or it's worth being separated.
Right.
And Discord doesn't really allow you to separate conversations nicely. Even like
Yeah.
current or post, you have to like mod reminder, do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, exactly. It's not very elegant. It just feels kind of like, just you show up. And I'm actually kind of worried about Discord in the future because they don't have I was discussing this in one of my business cohorts, and they don't have like a way to monetize. There's no way for Discord to stay afloat as a business, really, that people feel like they're going to for content creators. Because if I'm a content creator and I'm a YouTuber, or I'm an OnlyFans person, or I'm just a person that makes, some kind of content, my audience is not really they're gonna live on Discord, or they're gonna be like there as a community, but like I'm already monetizing in other ways outside of Discord. So why would I move my monetization over onto Discord when it just doesn't make sense when your content is usually elsewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah, that's Discord. Like, there's no like native advertising unless they're selling your data, which I mean that could be a potential. They could, I mean, not selling identifiable data, but using derivatives to say like, oh, this is a gaming community, this is the tabletop community, this is a because you can use what's it called when you run a query on text to see what the content is.
Oh, okay.
Um, so if you're just telling if it's my God, what's it called? It's
Tag?
not, huh?
A tag?
No, it's like a diffusion. Facebook uses it. A whole bunch of essentially you're saying
Okay.
like if it's positive or negative
Mm.
or what sort of content is being primarily discussed.
Mm-hmm.
This is how like stuff like how like NS not safe for work detectors work. Essentially, they're using
Okay.
context and tags and stuff like that to tell whether a content is slightly problematic.
Yeah.
Just through auto detection, which is how like video games tried to get rid of bad people before.
Right.
It's just strictly through sentiment analysis.
Right. Okay.
I knew it hit me eventually. So they use something like that to see like what is a community, what kind of person this is, and then try to derivate those into groups. But the problem is how are they using this? Are they Like I can't use it for anything. Like how would Discord use that to profit? Like to know that I'm
Right.
in these groups and communicate in this way, or can be assigned to these various level of user tags.
I know I'm gonna get hate mail for this, but like I feel like ads is the way that Discord needs to go. It's the least of the evils. Like it's the lesser evil compared to everything else. Like because the only way for them to really monetize is to like, okay, let's do some shit with AI, let's do some shit where we're stealing data, let's do something where we're just over monetizing like subscriptions or something. They just need to run ads. They just need a
Yeah,
little box in the corner for ads and just have that be that and
I
try
mean, the
and
only other way would be charging people to host Discord servers, but
yeah,
they kind of screwed themselves by opening that up already. So,
yeah,
because if they wanted to have people pay for managing their own Discords and upgrading to access to features, there could have been a chance for that. But
yeah,
now that it's so proliferated and because it's free, now they're paying the price and having, over proliferation of channels and having to maintain that. I think there was a
yeah.
cool thing about Twitch was that it's not the big Twitch streamers that are costing Twitch money. It's the thousands of one viewer, no viewer streamers that are actually the ones
Mm-hmm.
costing the money to maintain that latency.
Mm-hmm. And also like if we look at it like in that perspective, like they're hosting all of these images, all of these videos, all of this
Mm-hmm.
data that costs money to host, and that shit is up there permanently. When you post a picture on Discord, that shit is on the Discord servers forever. Like you can link
Yeah.
to it if you go to open image in new window or whatever. Um, that shit's gonna be on there, and you can actually just link to it. So
Yep.
I don't know how long
I've
that's
done
gonna
that before.
last.
It's like, oh, I need an image link, where am I going to do it? I'll just post it on Discord and copy paste it. Or use
Yeah,
Twitter. I used to do that too. Just use the
yeah.
image link from Twitter.
Yeah, I just don't know like where are they going to get their money? Like it's they have to run ads. They have to as much as I would hate it and I'm sure a bunch of people would complain about it, but like there's no other way that I see that them making money. Maybe some marketing genius on their side will figure it out, but
That's kind of been the same issue too with like how generative or model AI text what is it called, text generative model AI, large language model AI, like ChatGPT. How are you going to like profit off of it outside of just charging people for special access? Because like for Bing and stuff like that, it's like how do you earn additional money from advertisers? Because that is a big pool of money that you'd want to tap into, and a lot of it's like, okay, how can we say like, oh, you said TTRPG stuff, are you interested in like Iron Sworn / sponsored link,
right,
or
yeah.
something like that? Like I don't see why not to say like, hey, you're interested in these solo RPGs. You haven't mentioned Ironsworn, but Ironsworn is a swell RPG, solo RPG. Are you interested in checking that out?
Yeah.
Like I think there's a space for that, but it's how it's implemented.
Yeah, I just don't see how like right now they're still on that VC money. So and they're the horrible thing about shit like ChatGPT is
Now
like
it's not necessarily VC money. It's how can Microsoft make it profitable
right, yeah, it's like
or
they
integrated. Mm-hmm.
right, and right now they're profitable because they
Already
don't
own it.
have workers' rights for the people who are running it. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's the big the controversy with it right now is that the workers in Africa are unionizing because they're the people who basically run ChatGPT or these other
Do the
generative
content
models.
reviews, yeah, and
Yeah,
validations.
they tag everything and they move everything around and then they also moderate stuff that you're not supposed to like the most horrible shit in humanity that you can imagine. And I've seen some articles in regards to it. And
Yep.
every time I see like this new technology, some new technology coming out from specifically the Bay Area, of course, big tech, it's always like, okay, well, how many how many layers do I have to go into to find the human rights violation? It's like, how deep do I have to dig? Tesla, only a couple of layers. ChatGPT,
Not
maybe
even
3 or 4.
start at the top.
Yeah, it's like, oh fuck. Like, can we just have I don't know, maybe at some point we'll get a utopia or something. I don't know what's going on. The
That's
next 10 years
capitalism.
the next 10 years are going to be wild. I don't know like what's going on with our future honestly, especially with all these generative models and how advanced
Yeah.
that they are getting. And I have seen some interesting hopeful things that like obviously maybe the law can pause these sort of advancements until we get some proper regulation for it, but
Nope. Didn't
there's
happen at
some
Uber.
yeah, there's so many ways in our industry to exploit that and push out the indie. Like you see these people flooding drive through and DMs Guild right now with AI generated content that they're selling to people, and it's literally just like copy and paste from ChatGPT bullshit and like Midjourney, and it's like there was no vision going into this. This is literally just someone who spent 2 hours to produce something that would normally take a person, hundreds of hours that they're going to charge the same price for. It's baffling, and like it's a problem for the consumer too, because the consumer on some level, if they're going to pay money for a product, they want to know that someone actually cared enough to generate something that's useful, had a vision, and is artistic. But with the market flooded by these items, like it becomes that much more difficult to find good
Comes
stuff.
NFTs.
I don't know. It's a problem. I don't know what the future looks like for me and like me finishing this book in the next year, because by the time I ship the vineyard in 9 months from now at time of this recording, like in April next year, allegedly, right? Or sometime in spring or summer of next year, the market is going to be completely different. So I don't know like what it looks like for people like me, creating these Kickstarter campaigns. So, and I see these Kickstarter campaigns that are just using AI as well, that are a clear cash grab. And I'm just so, I can't, it just upsets me because I know all these people are just going to get burned. And like, they just don't see it because either they're not plugged into it, they're not knowledgeable, they're not educated about it. But, I don't know. It's generally upsetting. Well, I'm gonna move on because like I
Generally
don't want to talk.
upsetting.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that because like I talk about this sometimes in my like business cohort, and like it's very upsetting to like I don't use those programs personally. I don't think anybody using them is doing anything necessarily too wrong. I think it is wrong, but like it's really splitting hairs with a lot of the other things that the industry does, to be honest. Because for instance, like if I'm using if I'm following like an ethical business model on my end, as far as like paying my people well and treating them right and ensuring everything like that, am I doing that same thing and finding that my manufacturer is doing the same thing? Am I doing my due diligence? How do you verify all of that, that the factory workers are still getting like, paid enough and then also treated well? Like there's so many things about our global economy that it's just very difficult to deal with ethically.
Yeah, and like for me, like I've played with like Stable Diffusion and those tools to see like, what they're capable of and how people are using them, just to one, understand how they work and what they're capable of. But at the same time, it's like no way I'm gonna put that in the product
Yeah.
because one, there's so many implications and problems with it, and two, I don't own that work. Like I can't say that's mine. There's no legal way I can say that.
Yeah.
Like there's so I see it currently just as a tool or a toy or like an artist tool. If an artist wants to plug something into that and use that as a reference so that they can do their work on top of it, sure. But at that point, that's where it stops pretty much. Same with GPT. Like sure, you can use it as like a starting point or a resource, but if it's doing the work for you, then no. Like there's too much. Like I had it generate for my I have a my sister-in-law is doing like trying to do my retail work. So I was like, okay, we need to generate an email to outreach to stores to say, hey, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to reach out. We want to tell them about these products. Let's generate it using ChatGPT. Okay, you see it generates the email. Now let's edit it because it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to use it, you're definitely going to have to edit it because like it requires handcrafting still. Like sure, it'll get you a template to start because like for me, I hate writing. I'm a terrible writer and I'm very slow at writing. Drifter is taking me 3 years already. Now I can say describe this or try to do this, but at the same point, sure, it may give me a starting point, but it still might not put out anything I like,
Yeah.
or put out anything in the direction that I like. And
Hmm.
so I end up doing a ton of editing and a ton of writing anyways. And now sometimes does it put out something that goes, I'm okay with that. Let me run with that and edit it a bit more, and do more writing, sort of like what they call a sidekick for like the coding side of things. But at the same time, it's not really a sidekick because I'm trying to have it generate like a concept that I'm okay with, but I still need to edit it as a writer because it's
Yeah.
not saying the things I want it to say or wanting to say things a certain way that I don't want it to say.
Yeah. ChatGPT for me in my process, I think if I were to use it, all it would do is just like help me outline badly, and then I would have to re-outline, and then I just don't. So I just don't. So I've cut out the middleman. I've cut out ChatGPT, and I just outline myself, and then I draw my ideas from that because like I don't know, like if you want like milk toast content, I guess you can use ChatGPT. If you want to regurgitate the shit that's already been done and you don't have a vision and you're just producing content to sell to people who don't know any better and you're not either an artist or a writer that's like trying to do something new and you don't have a vision, then yes, it can create you some information like stuff that it's just
Yeah.
garbled up and spit out like
You
you're a
still have
little
to do a
baby
lot of
bird.
curation on the ideas.
Yeah.
Like I
It's
wouldn't be surprised for like people who run Patreons that create tons of content to be like, hey, let's just, pull the slot machine and see what comes out and like filter out the bad stuff.
yeah.
But it's a mess.
Yeah, I've seen in my business cohort there's some people that use it for YouTube video idea curation and they will just ask it stuff like, "Hey, what's the most interesting blah 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 topic?" And then it'll pop out like you
2021.
yeah, exactly. Like from 2019, it'll pop out like 5 or 6 ideas, and then you can like base like, hey, I'll make a video about this topic that came up. But like it's not producing stuff that can be cited. It's producing stuff
Oh,
that's wrong most of the time. It
you heard about the
mixes
lawyer case, right?
no, I haven't.
Oh, a lawyer has already used it and it produced cases that don't exist. He just literally
Yeah,
copy pasted as a brief to
yeah.
for a court case he's doing, and he got screwed.
Well, no shit. Like I should hope a lawyer doesn't do shit like that. Like that's the thing. Like it's like why would you? Oh God. Like it's not. It treats all data the same way. So it's like it treats fan fiction the same way it treats cited resource material. Like
All weighted
how
equally.
exactly? Like how can you trust that? Like
So that was the interesting thing I was hearing. Well, huge tangents I know we're going on, but I was hearing that like so large language models are technically generative text, where it's
mhm,
saying what is the most predictable word to come after the next. Now what I understand is that ChatGPT is a hybrid of generative model and a sort of neural network AI, where it's sort of battling itself in terms of trying to figure out what to write next. But in so doing, it still has a lot of authority problems in terms of like what is accurate and what isn't accurate,
yeah,
and what to reference. But the biggest problem I see with that is all the biases, all the wrong information, all
yeah,
the misinformation and disinformation that's
yep,
out there. It's like, great, so we can feed it propaganda, or
yeah.
it's also pulling from propaganda, which is like terrifying at the same time.
Yeah. And racism and misogyny and like all that stuff. And you see that with the image generators too,
Oh
because it
yeah.
just produces women with like ginormous tits. Like and
Hmm.
it's like, what? These women only exist on hentai websites
Yeah, I know.
like
Yeah, the internet.
but yeah, it's one of those yeah, anyway, so moving moving on to
Moving.
Kickstarter stuff. So your first Kickstarter, non-player cards. What was that like for you? You want to walk us through like running your first Kickstarter, the major things that you learned and since then you've run quite a few Kickstarters. It seems like you're running a Kickstarter twice a year, 2 year. Are you averaging 2 a year, 3 a year?
2 to 3 was the goal. I mean, COVID kind of
Hmm.
Owlbears and COVID kind of screwed everything up.
Right.
So yeah, definitely we're just trying to run 2 to 3 a year. I mean, if yeah. So non-player cards was the first Kickstarter project, and the idea was one to create like a useful tool for no matter what game I played. And so I was working with as I was doing my publishing content creating for Cipher System. I didn't have a lot of money. I was a student. I was getting paid, sure, but I was also racking up credit card debt because I didn't know how to use a credit card properly or manage a credit card properly. So that was its own problem. But the thing was I didn't want to like, spend hundreds of dollars in a project that I didn't know was going to earn money back, especially with RPGs. Like I was just doing this as a hobby. I didn't want to spend $500 on a piece of art that was just going to be a one-page piece, like one-page product per se, that I wasn't going to make money from. So the first thing I did was there were sort of like three different things I was doing at the time. One was I got in touch with artists to see if I could just use their work on a free basis, like a license to use to display and then link back to their work. So there was a couple one pagers where it's like, artist info, website, featured artist. And then there was others where I would find speed painters. So there's a Facebook group I came into contact with that was called like Daily Spit Paint. And so it had like three different prompts, like Owlbear, cute, fluffy, or something like that, or fluffy ridge. And people would spend 30 minutes and draw whatever they could on one of those prompts, or all three of the prompts. And you would get some people who could do some crazy crap in 30 minutes. And so I reached out to some saying, how much would it cost you? Like, can I pay you for a 30-minute piece? And so I had a couple artists. Aaron Eric was one of them, Connor Burke, and there was another one, Adafa Trimata, or Afta. And those were the first artists that I went with. One was in Turkey, one was in, I forget where specifically, in Southeast Asia. And the other one was actually in Canada as an architecture student. And they all had like a per hour rate. And so I would pay them essentially for a half hour. And then like you'd get more detail the more time I would pay for them to do the work. So I would pay for a bunch of concept pieces, which was maybe like $50, something like that, $50 to $75, because they were sort of doing it for fun as well. And so like I would get like a piece or two of concept artwork piece, and that's how I got almost of my pieces, my like early products done was with concept art. And then later on, like with non-player cards, I liked working with Aaron Eric, who was a concept artist, like a digital painter concept artist that went digital, and we did non-player cards. And so he was queued up to do 400 pieces of art in like 7 months, which was an interesting challenge for him, but because essentially he had to spend 30 minutes on each piece. And so I was working with a couple people in the Cypher System community to make non-player cards. I had about through two other collaborators that worked with me on creating like the lists, because we were trying to create a system list generator essentially. So we created the lists, hashed that out, and then sent the lists to Aaron, who would then illustrate them. And then I did all the layout work, and the collaborators also helped in doing the long descriptions for each of the entries. Crowdfunding wise, it was a pain in the butt. I didn't have much of an audience, so I relied heavily on like the Cypher System community was pretty open to helping out because I was an active community member there, and that was honestly like my best start that I could have got asked for is like community, but that pretty much got me like 50% funded because I asked for like 12K. And then the rest of it was sheer hustle. I approached so many different blogs because that was the thing. To get featured or discuss or to like talk about the project, and just seeing like where I could get posted. Google Plus, Google, that was a thing at the time as well. But it was very much like finding communities, reaching out, making sure I follow their guidelines. Kind of avoided Reddit for the most part. And yeah, it barely made it. Like I think we funded on like the day before the campaign ended. But at the time too, I was like, yeah, it was rough because I was trying to like find everywhere I could post about it because I didn't have a big audience. Maybe I had like 200, 300 followers at the time, something like that. So it was very much trying to like get the word out there, and it was rough.
Yeah, that was a while ago too. That was like it was a different time. That sort of content as well. I guess there's been a big boom with this sort of content as far as like crowdfunding and everything else. Like we have much more momentum now for a lot of these crowdfunding games and everything like that. Have you noticed like a big difference in just the momentum since you've moved on to new projects and done more?
I mean, I have more people that follow projects that I produce. What sucks sometimes is, some people are burned by a project, some people aren't. But at that point, I apparently do have some sort of like steady fan base of people,
Hmm.
apparently, that are backing every project that I create or like, approach at conventions and be like, so what's new? And it's like, shit, I don't have anything this year. Or not yet. But I think it's tricky because at every campaign there's always someone who's upset. I think those are mostly the funded backers who just want the rewards with the extra stuffs. Because every campaign I feel like I fucked up on something somewhere. Like non-player cards, we were supposed to do like a hollow card. Baby bestiary. Actually, we did implement that one fully. Baby bestiaries were all implemented. Getting the art prints were kind of a pain in the butt at the time, though, in the canvases. Atlas Animalia was supposed to be the signed artist plate, like sticker. I still have them all signed, but they need to be sent out to them. And stat books, and then Embers also was supposed to have stat books for like a whole bunch of systems, and I've been burned by that kind of. And then Owlbear Plush, I tried to produce things outside of the manufacturer. That also was a big problem. And then Hyperlight was just, I guess, not really an issue with Hyperlight. I was hoping it would fund more, but the issue with that currently is just I should have developed more of the game prior to crowdfunding.
Hmm.
Because people, I mean, also life and COVID and other project causing problems all
Right.
did not also contributed to having problems. But like now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, I need to have things mostly developed prior to launching, just because I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because Hyperlight uses a unique game system, or like is it something developed
It's
elsewhere?
self-developed. So it started off as a Cipher system hack.
Okay.
And originally we were going to use Cipher System, but licensing kind of fell through mostly because of like their timing, approvals, cost to license. This was before they went like open SRD. So the idea was like, oh, would this even be recognizably Cipher after all the changes I've made to it, kind of thing. Also, that was a valid question. And so after a little while, it's like, all right, let me just like abandon some of those ideas and just go in my own direction. So it kind of started with like a Cipher system core. I mean, energy is about the closest thing to it because I knew I didn't like how Cipher system your resource was your health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I abandoned that very early on, and that was one of the core things that we abandoned. Same with like ability level scaling and stuff like that, with the different tiers. But from that point on, it sort of just became its own piece, and evolved from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And right now you're are you delivering digital fulfillment right now or
Right now, the basic rules. So while developing it, I took a step back and developed a basic rules, sort of like let's hone down everything, let's put it into bullet points and like clear. This is how everything works. This is the rules foundation that we're going to be jumping off of and using and expanding upon. And then let me come back and put all those like clarifications into the core book. And so
Mhm.
I'm right now like finishing the core book essentially, as we speak. So.
Gotcha, cool. Yeah, that's yeah, I see that you've got the basic rules up on metalweavegames.com. So people can in theory download it right now because
Yep.
it's free and
Yep.
then play it.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's totally playable, interactive character sheets, delve decks, combat board, like all the resources and tools you can pick up and play currently.
Right.
Like it's
Nice.
totally playable. There's only like a couple abilities per discipline, like talents or combat abilities. Um, Obviously that gets expanded in the core book, but it's definitely more than enough for a group to pick up and get started with.
Gotcha. Cool. When you began putting these sort of things together, when did you start your website itself, and like when did you start like transitioning towards platforming these products that you're going to sell?
So I started transitioning my website, I think back 3 years ago. Yeah, so I think what I ended up doing was I was primarily reliant on DriveThru RPG as sort of like the main website that I was selling my stuff on. Changed names a couple times because I was still deciding what my company name was back then. back in 2017.
Mhm.
I think in 2017 I finally decided I was Metal Weave Games. So, but from there, yeah, it was mostly drive-through RPG. But I didn't have that many products, so it wasn't really like worth having my own website. And I was mostly selling our products on Amazon. Amazon was warehousing the product and shipped the product, so I was using fulfillment by Amazon at the time. So I didn't actually have any product to manage, other than my own Amazon account. So that was sort of nice in its own way. Baby Bestiary came along, and it was fulfilled. Was it fulfilled through TWE? So through the warehouse I currently work with, I think they also did some Amazon. I'd have to double check. It's been years. But essentially, like I either fulfilled through Amazon for the first Baby Bestiary, or it was fulfilled through my warehouse. And then from there, it kind of like, okay, now I have inventory of stuff and I need to sell it places. So I think at the time it went into Amazon as well. And that's when it started to transition to I need to have a website because Drive Through RPG is not going to sell my book. And that's where it started happening in terms of transitioning to, okay, I need a place to sell people stuff. I would have to go back and check. Yeah, it's been kind of weird how it's all developed over time, kind of in parallel. And so originally, what did I do originally? I think I had Adobe Muse as my website.
I remember that. Yeah.
And so, because that's what I was messing with. I was messing with all the Adobe products back then. So that was like, okay, here's an easy way to create a website. Like I know how to use InDesign. This is kind of InDesign-y, a little limiting, but it works. And I think that I used at the time. But then I might have switched quickly into Shopify, because that was sort of like the selling place to be. And so that's where I'd have to check. It's been a long time. But from there, I sort of like had the website, but Drive Through RPG was still giving me most of my profits at the. And it wasn't till like a few years ago where it was like, okay, 100% we're flipping to the website. Like I'm focusing all my effort here. Here's where we're selling stuff, digital and physical. Because well, also at the same time there was a period where I thought I was convinced that WordPress would be cheaper to run, and it isn't. That was a rough year of transitioning back and forth. But it was definitely worth going back to Shopify because I just have too much to manage in multiple places.
Yeah. What's the advantage of Shopify?
I would say, well, at least for my scale, it's like inventory management for multiple locations and stability. Shopify just has better integrated stability than WordPress does. So WordPress doesn't guarantee that all the apps talk to each other nicely.
Yeah.
Whereas in Shopify, if I run into a problem where an app isn't working quite nicely, like it doesn't necessarily like impact everything else around it.
Yeah.
It's hard to get much more crossover error where it's like in essentially the features I needed was inventory management, warehouse management, shipping management, and digital content. And I needed all those to work at the same time.
Yeah.
And in Shopify, I can just plug in something for digital. I can plug in something. I mean, I don't have to plug in anything for warehouses. So I just needed one app to manage digital fulfillment, and all my physical stuff was already handled. So, and then the builder, yeah, it's not as nice and easy, but it's a lot more customizable in terms of if you can figure out the code and change things around or just use the templates. Shopify, like I'm paying a little more for it because I need more users access and I have more locations and stuff like that. But like I could probably work at the baseline level and stay there for a while. And I think for a while, like I know I paid for 3 years right up front because it's just cheaper. But overall, I think it's like paid for itself in terms of like better shipping calculation or like more accurate shipping calculation. There's shipping calculations you're always going to futz with. Honestly, I hate it. But overall, like I feel like it's been a lot nicer to just manage and like not worry about it crashing or having to debug crashes.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a great solution if you're just you're the only one working on it, right? You're the only person Yeah, that sounds like a great solution then if you're able to manage it.
I mean, there are permissions you can do. I think I can get like 5 people total in there. I think 3 is out of the base license, but you can modify permissions to people to be like, you only have access to blog posts.
Right.
You know, if I needed to curate access. But right now it's like my warehouse has access to orders and stuff like that. They can update inventory if necessary. They can go in, print packing slips. They pretty much go use Shopify and do all the shipping of my product because they have a category just for them. So they can go in, do all the shipping stuff, and I don't even have to look at it when it
Right.
comes down, except if there's an issue.
Yeah.
Which they do reach out to me maybe every other week, maybe, and there's like, oh, look at this order, does this need to be shipped here, or does it need to be shipped there, or this,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
or you're running out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had I have this problem where I accidentally send like my stuff to the wrong address because I've like lived in so many locations, so sometimes I like go through the shopping experience too quickly and I like click the wrong address. But I ordered a chair from like, and fuck these people, but like xchair.com, and it was recommended to me. It's like a $600 chair.
Oh damn.
And I shipped it to the wrong address. And I like immediately within 5 minutes realized it and tried to cancel. And they're like, "Yeah, we can't change the address after you've ordered." And I'm just like, "What do you mean? What do you mean you can't do that? Well, like, what kind of business are you fucking running that you can't change the address?" So I get this text from this guy in North Carolina, like, "Hey, do you want to come pick up your chair?" And I was like, "I live in Washington," so I'm like, no.
Yeah, you gotta ship that to me. I'm sorry.
But yeah, it's just like, why? I don't know. At some point, xchair.com decided to just cut out the middle management of having customer service. Like, oh my god, terrible. I do want to talk to you about how do you work with people that want to work with you as a publisher? Like, how does that work for you? And are you open to that in the future, like these next couple of years? What are you looking at as far as like future projects?
So it's hard because I'm not doing this full time. And that actually makes it like a whole bunch of it like compounded issues of like how much time I can spend on things, especially now that I have like a 1-year-old son and a house and a mortgage. And it's like, okay, like I need to have at least like 75 to 75K to survive, let alone enough to live comfortably. And to hit that, it would just require like higher income from one, selling the stuff that I have, but also making income off of all 3 Kickstarters consistently. Because I think what I was calculating is I could make 15K a year potentially, 15 to 20 maybe off of just retail sales. But the problem after that is, how do I bridge the extra 40? And it's like, okay, well, Kickstarters could do that. Like if Owlbear Plush was like exceeding 60K of goal,
Right.
that is possible, but that's not reliable, especially since it took 3 years and then freight kind of killed that 60K.
Yeah.
But publishing wise, how there's sort of like 2 approaches right now. So like I have a bunch of product ideas I want to implement. Like, oh, I want to do a parent adventure. So there's a couple things. There's like supplement ideas. There's systemless ideas that I have. And then there's original game ideas. Like I'm there's no shortage of ideas here. My shortage is time.
Yeah.
And then there's like published products. So I have a bunch of ideas, and then what I'll try and do, or at least been recently trying to do, is I'll hand them off to someone. And so I'll do like maybe a core design or initial design and hand that off to someone, sponsor them to create the rest of the work, and then that will be crowdfunded and managed by that person. So we did this with Paladin for Incantations, where I kind of came up with the idea of I want a 5th edition ritual book, a book of rituals kind of inspired from 4th edition D&D, but made for 5th edition. So spells that take longer than 1 action. And so I gave them the concept. They ran off with it, and then Paladin kickstarted it under the Metal Eve account and and managed all the art and stuff like that. So I had like no hands in it except for like approvals essentially. And that went pretty well for the most part. And so I would call that like a sponsored project, where it's like, it's my idea, but you're kind of working under my umbrella and so and so. The other one is like, I see a project that can fit under the Metal Weave umbrella, whether it's like a systemless, an independent, or something cute. And that's really much like, can we help in terms of fulfillment and can we help in terms of like crowdfunding support and fulfillment? And that's sort of like a weird new territory because it's like, what is the future of Metal Weave in terms of like the publisher and that presence of a publisher. Like, are we trying to be Steam, or like are we trying to be like, are we going to take everybody in and try to grow this umbrella? Are we trying to remain focused on certain types of products? Do we want separation in terms of like games and systemless? Do we want to focus on systemless? I'm very conflicted on that still, or like bouncing ideas on. But right now, it's sort of very much like I'll see a project and be like, hey, can we produce that? Help publish that for you. Usually it's project by project based, or to see like if that's like, hey, this seems like something that does well or is doing well, and that we can partner with, that will look good for us and our brand, I guess. So there's a little bit of like marketing brain in there, which is what it is. But also like, does it fit with Metal Weave in terms of like, is it evocative, inspirational? Does it fit with like the systemless branch, or does it fit within the Baby Bestiary branch, or does it fit within like the games branch? At least that's kind of like where I'm trying to put things now, or like envisioning. It's kind of weird because now with like the whole 5th edition rework change, it's very unclear on how content for 5th edition will move forward. In terms of like, Project Valorant, it's like, yes, this will be 5th edition compatible, but it's like, but you don't know what the 2024 rules will look like. So how do you know you'll be compatible? Especially like with the playtests, they're making some big changes to each of the classes and the feats and all that stuff. So like, there's going to be a big rework there, and so it's sort of like unknown. We used to have like a 5th edition like bucket, and that is a profitable bucket. Where like we had put Awakened in there. We did Dragon Stew, which was kind of cute 5th edition supplement. I want to do a cooking book, maybe not that specific one, but like that also kind of was a publishing experiment to see like, oh, we can help out. How does this work? But yeah, it's very much Kickstarter support and then fulfillment support. I don't know. It's interesting because of how Kickstarter does projects, that like we could run those projects for people, because you're only allowed one project, and if you're tied to any other project, you can't. So it's weird that like I want to help other projects, but I can't be listed on them, or I can't be tagged in them.
Right.
The Kickstarter account, because then all of a sudden you're part of that project and can't launch another project until that one's done, which is bizarre. So it's messy. But like publishing wise, it's like trying to figure out what fits for the brand. I think if people are looking to get our stuff published with us, I think like the straight up thing would be like, is it cute? Like, does it fit the Baby Bestiary? Because that's its own brand.
Yeah.
Does it fit any of our systemless content? Or does it stand alone as its own systemless content? Like, is it a coffee table book, or is it a lore book? And then is it a like, and then on next to that, like we have indie games like Apothecaria, Diesel, which was sort of come to us through recommendation. We have Apothecaria. What else did we have? Hyperlight Drifter. Like, so then there's like a games corner that's like, these are just games. And then we have like then there's like Paladin, because we worked closely with Paladin for a long time. Which was like Polyhedral, which is an interview book. So it's like, that's systemless coffee table book, kind of.
Right.
So like trying to like enforce the categories has been tricky as well, and also just figuring out like what is our vision moving forward for the company.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, you do have like you have a few different directions. It is very interesting. Just as a publisher, you're so, I would say you're really broad. Like you have
and
like
plushes.
Yeah, you're very broad as a publisher, so and then also you're pushing like, cuddly owlbears, so it's like, I just don't know, like, what's the next thing that's going to come out of Metal Weave Games? Like, there's so much different shit going on, because I'm looking at the various systems, and like I'm on your website, like 5th edition, Cypher, Ryu, Tama, 13th Age, Powered by the Apocalypse, Forge in the Dark, Pathfinder, Powered by Fate, Shadow of the Demon Lord, Savage Worlds, Drift Engine, and OSR compatible. And
so those were all born because of Atlas and Embers. Those were all supposed to be all the supplements that we were to create for Atlas and Embers in all of those systems, and that's where I meant by I got burned by systems.
Oh, okay.
So like Ryutama, we were supposed to make an adventure for the Baby Best for the Owlbear plush featuring. That still needs to be done. I have it still listed, but we still have Ryutama, and we sell Ryutama because we had permission from the creators to sell them on our website.
Right.
And Ryutama kind of fits the Baby Bestiary and Metal Weave games kind of cute Honobo vibe. So that kind of worked as an inclusion. Cypher System, that was sort of our baseline, so we have a couple products there. Shadow of the Demon Lord, Rob Schwab, the creator of Shadow of the Demon Lord, actually created a supplement for Embers for us. So that was a nice plugin because I didn't have to do any of the design work, so he did that. Pathfinder and stuff, that was in 5th edition. We do have stuff made for that, but they need to be finished. Cypher System, I need to make it finished. There's a whole bunch of I have a bunch of manuscripts that I need to lay out and get finished. But it's tricky because the original idea of the systemless idea was we have a systemless lore book, and then you get a digital supplement for your favorite system.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be our way to drag in people from other systems.
Okay.
The problem is supplement development is expensive.
Yeah.
Or more expensive than you think it is.
Yeah.
Because, if you have Atlas Anomalia, that's 100 creatures. 100 stat blocks is a lot. Especially if you want to make it kind of fourth, not 4th edition-y, but a way where it's not just we have lizard folk in Atlas Anomalia. So it's we have an axolotl, but it's you're not going to use just one stat block. You want you want the chief, you want the shaman, or medicine doctor, you want the warrior, you want the tradesman, you want more than just one thing. And so it's okay, this is balloons in complexity very quickly. Mm-hmm. From 100 to 150,
mm-hmm.
and then development, do you pay per hour, per stat block, depending on the complexity? For Pathfinder 1 stat blocks, some of these legendary creatures are 2 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah, so stat blocks have been sort of I know people on the Kickstarter have stopped asking, but I know some still want it or have given up asking for it because of how long it's taken. But those are you got the book, that's the primary goal. Now these are in the back end, and I'm trying to get them done, but other projects and other fires keep coming up that cause delays, or I would ask someone to finish it, they don't quite finish it, and then I have to circle around and finish it myself, essentially.
What's so speaking of not finishing stuff or working with folks, as a publisher, when you're looking to either hire someone as a project manager, someone as a lead, what are you generally looking for first of all, and then how does someone get themselves into that position, to be honest? If you're looking to hire somebody, what assures you that they're going to come through?
I don't know.
Okay.
Partly the reason why I haven't hired anyone, and also just lack of funds to hire someone to do that kind of work. Right now, I'm only paying myself a couple $100 a month. I'm paying Katie a couple $100 a month, and then the warehouse, she bills me on her own stuff. So I'm very much penny pinching essentially because it's not sustainable with the current capacity that we're at. And then I have a bunch of money that's hanging out somewhere else that I'm still trying to get a hold of, which has also made things very difficult. But if I was to look back to the original question about if I'm looking to hire a project manager, what would I look for? It would probably be prior project success, but every project is different. As I can see from my own projects, some go well, some don't. I think part of it is responsiveness and action. And then I think the other part too is me being involved or having work in a place where I can collect it or access it. So one thing, for instance, a lesson that I had is during COVID or in the past couple of years, one of the paladin has been working on a project, and he got sick, and there was a death, a close friend death, and he's just been out of commission for a while. And the problem I had there was, since files weren't in the Dropbox, our write-ups, art aren't in the Dropbox, I don't have access to those. I can't pick up where he left off, essentially. Mm-hmm. And that makes things very difficult in terms of just project management, especially when it's I see a bunch of complaints from backers, or I'm getting pinged on Twitter by a backer of a project saying where is everything going? And then I have to be okay, what's going on here? The Eye of Sauron needs to turn. And that makes it very difficult when I don't have visibility into things. Especially, I mean, one being a solo company, I feel like I have to be aware of everything. It's hard to kind of let go of that. I know as a startup, the main goal is to surround yourself with people who can do things. Well, surround yourself with smarter people, which is going to be a hard thing. But I think the hardest part is to surround you with people you trust, especially when you're hiring them, right? The sense of loyalty is different. And so what I've tried to do, at least for projects, is like build up a repertoire of like contractors I can trust or work with reliably or that produce reliable work. And then kind of like ping that list of people to say, hey, I need this. Who's up for it? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So very much more of like a pool based approach, a talent approach, than a project manager. But I think so. Like for Metal Wave, if we were to get a project manager, they would essentially be running projects on their own, and then I guess compensation would be based on like the projects they run because they're running it under the Metal Wave umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So it would almost be like a creator. Essentially, it would be a creator license relationship almost.
Yeah.
Because who would own the project, who would own the rights to the project, who would own the distribution of the project, that all comes into question with that relationship, or becomes a question as part of that relationship. If it's going to be owned by and published by Metal Weave Games, then it would very much be a creator sort of license where it's like you're essentially cutting out a budget for your time, your work, and all that stuff, and then we are just doing the fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that would be a person by person basis. At this point, it seems to be, where we've worked with like Paladin, and then everyone else has sort of been, well, it's interesting because like Paladin, he's like done the sponsored project and he's run his own projects. We've done a couple projects where like Tales from Myriad or even Animon Story where like we bring them into our umbrella, but they're still just running their own project. But right now, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because like money makes things difficult.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think probably one of the best approaches is something like, at least from an outsider's perspective, and I haven't been in your shoes, but it seems like what you did with Paladin is probably the best case scenario because then you have someone who has ownership and is driving the project, and then you're just sort of observing and then, in doing some supervisory type stuff and helping when you
Managing
can.
the finances and yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe that moving into the publisher role for you kind of looks like you just do more boring accounting type stuff. But I don't
And
know if
honestly, that seems to be where I'm kind of intentionally heading, is more focusing on the infrastructure.
yeah.
The problem, so like, I think Drifter is going to be my last big design project.
Uh-huh.
After that, I'm pretty much going to be writing prompts for, prompts or project ideas, project scoping for people to pick up and run with, because it's like, oh, I want to do a adventurer's cookbook, how to eat all the monsters you kill, kind of thing, or I want to do a parent's adventure guide, how does a parent bring their child on adventures and the different options that happen, or how do adventurers retire, lore book kind of stuff. And like all of those are great ideas. They would probably do fine as Kickstarter projects. Do I have time to work on any of them? No.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
my own idea of how to redefine 5th edition or like, redo
Yeah.
5th edition. And like, sure, I could poke at that on the side, but I can't make that like a major project that I'm going to work on because
Yeah.
I don't got time for that. Or I mean, I can poke on it with ideas and like type stuff out on Discord, and share those ideas or talk about it on TikTok. But it's, unless I can like put it into writing and like get like a playtest out, then there's no point. And my time is better focused in making sure distribution's working, making sure we have inventory, making sure prices for shipping, ensuring backer kits properly set up for people, making sure the warehouse is good, and then working on making the site good, and then integrating that with sponsorships, content creators, and getting our blog/newsletter actually going properly.
Yeah. Are you working, I'm not trying to get like deets from you on the podcast, but like so I've been working on my newsletter since like November, and it's been like kind of off and on, and it's like anything else where like you just have all these fires you have to put out. I haven't put out my podcast. I have like a backlog of the podcast right now actually. I have like something I've been like procrastinating on posting because I have to do a minor edit. But yeah, so I built it up to like 850 people right now. I think we're like pushing for 900 this month,
Nice.
but like it just takes so long. Because what I noticed was, and this is a problem I ran into for the Kickstarter campaign, we hit total 100,000 inboxes from like partners that were like pushing us, right?
Hmm.
And it only resulted in like 10 sales, which is not good.
That's a low conversion, yeah.
It's a super low conversion. So what we have just kind of like I've come to the conclusion of like I thought that even with a lower percentage than normal, because it was in my newsletter, it would still convert well, but it did not. So what I've essentially found is that your newsletter only matters for your own products. And I think that it's just one of those things where it's like it's a grind. Like you just gotta make newsletter content, and then like people who subscribe will eventually, if you're providing them enough value, otherwise they will be interested in buying your products as well. It's just it's so tough to like continuously produce stuff that would go in a newsletter and people would be interested in it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, like I mean, I had newsletters that say like, this is a monthly newsletter. Sorry, it's been 6 months, or something like that. Or sorry, it's like now I think it's been like literally 2 years since I put out like a newsletter update.
yeah,
And that's something that I don't have time to do, and I need someone to do for me. But
yeah,
I need to convey all that information to someone who can convey that. Because it's very much like, I'm putting out, Twitter updates like, hey, books arrived in Australia, hey, things are
hmm,
going here. Like, those are all actionable and could be newsletter worthy, or even like, let's run a sale, at the discretion of whoever's doing the posts. Like, I need one thing that I always wanted is to find someone who could do that. And it's one, I stopped looking after a while. That's honestly one piece of it. Not like I haven't had enough other distractions to keep me busy.
yeah,
And then like not that I had more distractions, but like me being able to scoop up Zine Quest, that presents its own other opportunity or window of opportunity to like test a different angle. But yeah, very much like newsletter, your own newsletter is going to be the best. And the tricky thing about getting into other people's content is, yeah, you might have a reduced intake rate, but really it comes down to, how alike is the content and
hmm,
audience, because that's where it really comes out. And that's where essentially you're taking a shotgun approach. Like, I'm going to put out a
hmm,
bunch of things here, there, and everywhere and seeing what audience it resonates with. And it's, tricky. Because like on one hand, for vineyards, like branding it specifically, LGBTQ plus inclusive is a very good thing. But at the same time, that will turn off some people who are, because it's pushing it, they're not going to. But you could say
yeah,
like, dark Mr. Murder Mystery
yeah,
D&D book,
yeah,
and even if they weren't against the inclusionary bits, sometimes just like not having it like on the banner, like
right,
of the ad that they get,
yeah.
it's consumers are weird.
Yeah,
Um,
Andres, I actually have a story specifically about
oh
this
no.
because I came to the conclusion because I rewrote my copy for the
Yeah.
Vineyard Kickstarter 3 times. And what I found was so I was trying, and like here's the most horrible thing. Like the first week is so important, the first 3 days are so
Mm-hmm.
important. We really underperformed. So I was A/B testing all this different like marketing copy and like how do I get people in the door? How do I get my Google ads dialed in, my meta ads and
Mm-hmm.
everything to get people like in the door and like buy and like understand what the product is? Because our product isn't complex, it's just there aren't really products like it.
Yeah,
So
and
like
that makes
it's
it tricky. Yeah.
exactly because people can't pick this up and be like, "Oh, this is a new D&D book." Like it doesn't work that same way. I mean, really now like I've kind of evolved to the point where I'm like, yeah, this is a campaign setting and guidebook with an emphasis on our cool undead mob, right? And that's pretty much like all I really describe it as anymore. But like getting to that point took so long that I wish I had started that process months prior to the Kickstarter. And it was really down to the fact that I just did not have enough manpower, meaning my time, to do that. But you have to go through that process of like, how do you, within 10 words or less, describe something to someone and have it resonate to where they can make a buying decision?
Yeah.
And that was pretty difficult. And I put out like a tweet, probably like in the middle of my Kickstarter campaign, because I was like, I tried a few different things. In like full disclosure, I tried outright marketing, and part of that was like, I think it was a mistake to brand us as queer up front, because it turned off a lot of people, I believe. Because a majority
I hate
of our
to agree with it. Like, I absolutely hate it, but it's like, it's probably so. Like, unfortunately, I
yeah,
hate to say it even, because it's like, consumers.
it 100% it was, because a majority of our audience is straight. So it's like,
And so
it's
because they
like,
don't initially identify with it, they kind of passed it
correct.
up.
Yeah, and it's not because those people are necessarily bigoted or hate queers, but it's like they will look at something that has the branding that is queer. They look at it as though that's who it's intended for,
Yep.
as opposed to like, this is a cool thing into a
That
new
is queer
subject.
inclusive.
Correct. Yeah. So people like
Oh,
frame
sorry.
things.
Drink my water bottle with a camera on it.
The we just for the audience, we just like zoomed into Andreas's face. But so yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's like it's a very tricky like fine line with like most advertising, and like figuring out what's the right balance that we need to strike. And when I'm hiring a marketer for starting next week at some point, for those listening, it's long since happened by the time this comes out, but we're going to put together some PPCs, some pay-per-click ads, which are the ones that you see on like Facebook or Instagram, or the other places. I know you know what PPCs are, but like, just for the audience, like those ads that you never click on unless it's like interesting or something in like Facebook. Those are PPCs. So we're going to be running PPCs, and I bet we're going to have to cut queer. I bet we're going to have to cut it, because that's just not where the majority of the audience is. And like, I can have these core concepts of queerness like within the book itself, but like leading that way with the advertisement, I don't know if it's necessarily the best move.
Try your own control audience test for that,
Yeah.
and then try to target it specifically.
Yeah.
You know, if they like this, if they're associated to that. I don't think queer is a selectable subcategory of users that you can find, but I'm sure that you could do some like audience querying to get to nail down that group.
Yeah,
potentially.
I did find something very interesting though, that like we, for whatever reason, during our Google ads, I was like, yeah, okay, worldwide, we'll just do it, we'll try it, we'll see what happens. I had a huge amount of interest from India, but I had no buyers from India, and I think it is because we have used so a lot of our aesthetic for the book itself, we are intentionally doing a Raj Victorian sort of aesthetic, which is, you know, India after, you know, colonization, and so it's sort of like that mixture of those two cultures, of both you know, the Victorian, and then also, you know, the Indian, different cultures in India. And aesthetically, some of our ads had some of that stuff in it, so I think that people were curious, but essentially did not click on it. And I also kind of wonder about like the state of like queerness and its acceptability, its acceptance in India. There's a big thing. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of
something I heard about that. There was an interesting talk or something that I heard about queerness in India, or just like homosexuality, queerness, and expression.
Yeah. There's a lot of they're going through a lot of what we are going through right now in America, essentially, and I believe it's in some ways it's different, and I don't want to say better or worse, because I don't know specifically about what the queer people are going through in India, but I know that it is very difficult for queers in India right now. That's the gist that I've gotten, but yeah, it's tough. I don't know. I don't have enough time in the day either, but that's where we're at. That's indie publishing, baby.
I know, right? Gotta love it.
So, with that being said, as my voice, like, I'm still recovering from COVID, so my voice is a little ratchet. Sorry for our listeners. But was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? We can talk briefly about owlbears and how you can order them, because there's not much to talk about for owlbears except that they're really cute and cuddly.
Yeah, Owlbears. Well, I mean, aside from being available on the Metal Wave Games website or owlbearplush.com, which just takes you to the Metal Wave Games website. I could build another website just for it, but Shopify, yeah, it's just too complicated. But yeah, it's interesting because like it did really well. I mean, I wanted to do a plush ever since the first Baby Bestiary project. Like ever since the Baby Bestiary hit it off, it's like plushes. We gotta like, how do I turn this into like a merchandising brand? But and so it was like, okay, we could do children's books, we can do plushes, we can do supplements, we can do adventures. Like I could imagine doing a Tamagotchi kind of thing, or like some sort of app, which I still want to do, but that's its own, like, I need time. Like I need time to develop a game,
Yeah,
because I have monkeyed around in Unity. I have the resources. I just don't have the time.
I can't
Aside from all
wait.
the
I can't wait to see the Twitter posts about people posting their obituaries for their owlbear plushies they let die.
That's why I have to do it like, it's like, but if I make it like, if I do it like a Tamagotchi, yeah, it would die. But it's like, oh, if I do like an app, then at least like you can keep it alive, you can make it grow faster or grow over time for a longer period. Then I have more pixels to deal with. Then I can do more art about it aging or doing different colors, But then that becomes its own pipeline and development, and in order to get funding for such, I would have to show a reasonable amount of effort,
Yeah,
or work done. And if I want it to look reasonable, then it's going to require an unreasonable amount of time.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Well, you'll find the link in the show notes, on the website Dollars and Dragons, and or the description, if you wanna check it out. Thank you so much for stopping by, Andreas. This has been a wonderful chat. Hi, thanks for listening. If you want to support me, you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/isfriday, or you can find some of the work that I'm doing at vineyardrpg.com if you want to pre-order the book that we made. Thanks.